You're not my dad. Brandon is. Those 5 words dropped like a grenade in my living room, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. My son, Tyler, 17, eyes blazing with fury, screamed at me while clenching his fists. Behind him stood my wife, no, my lying, manipulative wife, Emily, arms crossed, wearing a little smirk like this was all some kind of joke. I want you to pay for Brandon's treatment, Tyler continued. He raised me. You just paid the bills. My hand trembled as I pulled the DNA test results from my back pocket. I just found out yesterday you're not my biological son. I looked at Emily. Her expression didn't change. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She rolled her eyes. So what? You've been his dad for 17 years. You gonna cry now, Jake? I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to. You knew. I asked. My voice was almost a whisper. Oh, Jake, she said with that fake laugh she always used when she lied. Of course I knew. Brandon and I were still seeing each other after the wedding. You just never paid attention. My heart wasn't just broken. It was set on fire. And Tyler? I asked. She smiled. We agreed not to tell him. But now that you've found out, maybe it's time he knew who his real father is. A man who actually knew how to make me feel alive. I froze. My brain went silent. My hands went cold. Tyler stepped forward. So? Are you going to help with Brandon's hospital bills or not? Let me get this straight, I said. You want me to pay for the cancer treatment of the man who killed my wife and fathered the kid I've been raising for nearly 2 decades? Emily nodded. It's the least you could do. You have a good job. Brandon doesn't. That was the moment something in me snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't punch a wall. I smiled. The next morning, I vanished. But I didn't run. I planned. Because when your entire life collapses in one night, you've got 2 choices. Fall with it. Or burn every piece of it to the ground and make them watch. I walked out of that house without a word. No suitcase, no goodbye. I left everything behind. My clothes, my wallet, even the keys to the Dodge Charger I spent 3 years restoring. Emily could have it. She already took more than metal and rubber. She took 17 years of my life and crushed them into ash. But I didn't leave to cry. I left to prepare. 3 hours later, I was parked in front of the only person who ever told me the truth, my lawyer, Doug Millstone. Thick glasses, voice like a fax machine, and a brain sharp enough to cut steel. I dropped the DNA test on his desk. He adjusted his glasses. You want full disassociation? I want to destroy her, I said. Legally, financially, emotionally. And if you can find a loophole to ruin her little boyfriend too, I want that too. Doug didn't blink. What about the kid? My jaw clenched. He's not my kid. I didn't wait for his moral lecture. I stood up. Call me when the paperwork is done. That night, I slept in my car, not because I had to, but because I needed to feel something real. Cold leather, no pillows, just me and the sick truth replaying in my head like a broken record. Emily faking orgasms while Brandon probably railed her in our bed. Tyler yelling at me, calling another man Dad. And my mom? Oh yeah, we'll get to her. Because the next day, when I stopped by to pick up some documents from her place, she sat me down and said something I'll never forget. You need to let this go, Jake, she said calmly, sipping tea. You have a terminal condition. Don't spend your last months full of hate. I stared at her. What did you just say? She didn't even blink. You heard me. Emily told me about the diagnosis. You have a few months left. You should focus on peace. My hands turned to fist again. I don't have a terminal disease. What the hell are you talking about? Her eyes widened. She said you did. That's why she had to move on. That's why she let Brandon into Tyler's life. I stood up slowly. My mouth was dry, but my blood boiled. So let me get this straight, I said. Emily told you I was dying, so she could justify screwing another man under my roof? Mom tried to backpedal. She said you knew. That you made peace with it. That you agreed it was best for Tyler to have someone strong when you're gone. I almost laughed. Instead, I stared at her like a stranger. I'm not dying, Mom. But after hearing this, maybe I should start writing obituaries, because these people are already dead to me. She reached for my hand. Jake, she's just scared. You can't blame her. I pulled my hand away. Don't ever speak to me about her again. And just like that, my mother joined the list. I was done talking. I was done crying. It was time for action. The next few days, I became a ghost. I stayed in motels under fake names. I hired a second PI to dig into Brandon's finances, and what we found was gold. Turns out, Brandon, the real dad, was in massive debt, owed back taxes, and had a sealed assault record. A few well-placed calls later, the IRS got a surprise visit, and Brandon? He lost his job. But that was just the appetizer. Emily still had no idea I'd pulled the plug on our joint bank account. Every dollar she thought she was spending from our savings was now a frozen asset. The best part? I left her just enough for one final purchase. A plane ticket to nowhere. I booked her a first-class flight to Miami for a fake girls' retreat she thought she won from some radio contest. I knew she'd take it. She always wanted to show off on Instagram. But when she landed, she realized something was off. No driver. No hotel. Just a printed sign with her name and divorce papers. She texted, then called. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't done yet. This wasn't revenge. This was only the setup. And my next move? Would leave everyone begging for mercy. Emily called 23 times that day. I counted. At first, it was the usual. Jake, what is this? Where's the hotel? Where's the retreat? Then came the panic. My card got declined. I can't even get a cab. What's going on? By call number 15, her tone had shifted. You think this is funny? You're going to regret this, you psycho. Yeah, I was the psycho. Not the woman who let another man raise my son. Not the woman who convinced my own mother I was dying just to justify cheating. I didn't answer a single call, but I watched every voicemail transcript roll in. And I smiled. She had no idea that the phone in her hand, the one I gifted her on our anniversary, was now tracking her location in real time. She had no clue I was watching her pace outside Miami International like a lost tourist. But this wasn't just about humiliation. This was phase 2. I wasn't finished until everyone who stabbed me tasted what it felt like to bleed from the inside. While Emily scrambled in Miami, I was already back in town, watching Brandon from across the street like a hawk. The man was a walking stereotype. Loud car, cheap watch, greasy smile, and a pattern. Every Tuesday night, he went to a poker game with a few coworkers. But last week, he came home late. Real late. I followed him. Not to the poker table, but to a house I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was a side hustle. Then I saw her. Young. Maybe 22. Blonde. Wearing his hoodie. She kissed him on the porch like they'd done it 100 times. So, the homewrecker was also cheating on the woman he stole? Delicious. I waited a day, then made my move. I sent Emily an anonymous message from a burner account with photos of Brandon and a girl. I made sure the angle showed her belly. Yep, pregnant. I didn't know for sure, but it was a hell of a gamble. 10 minutes later, I got confirmation. Emily, you piece of sh*t. How long has this been going on? Then, you made me choose you over Jake for this? For a kid with a baby mama? She went off the rails. She called his boss. Told them everything about his past, the sealed assault, the tax issues, the shady deals he ran at work. I didn't even have to lift a finger. Brandon was fired by noon. Later that night, I watched him get kicked out of his apartment by the landlord. I'd anonymously tipped him off about the unpaid rent and suspicious behavior. Brandon stood outside, suitcase in hand, screaming into his phone. Emily was probably on the other end, foaming at the mouth. And Tyler? He had no idea what storm was about to hit him. Until he came home from school and found the house half empty, his mom back from Miami, crying on the couch, and a court notice on the table with paternity fraud lawsuit stamped in red. My final message to him was short. You called Brandon your real dad. Good. Now go live with him. Oh wait, he's homeless. That night, I sat alone on a rooftop bar, sipping whiskey. The city lights below looked calm, unaware of the personal war I had just waged and won. But even with all that revenge, I didn't feel peace. Not yet. Because I hadn't heard from one person. My mother. She was the one who told me to accept the cheating. The one who sided with Emily. The one who believed the lie about me dying without even asking me once. So I decided to pay her a visit. Not for closure, but for war. Because betrayal doesn't just come from your enemies. Sometimes it's your own blood holding the knife. I parked a block away from my mother's house. Not because I wanted to sneak in. Because I needed a moment. A moment to control the rage boiling under my skin like acid. I rang the doorbell once. She opened it wearing that same pastel cardigan she always wore. Soft smile. Kind eyes. That fake, maternal aura. Jake, she said. Thank God. I've been praying you'd come talk to me. I stepped inside. Said nothing. My eyes scanned the living room like a battlefield. Everything was just like it was when I was a kid. Except now, it smelled like betrayal. She followed me to the kitchen. I know you're hurt, but I cut her off. Don't. She blinked. Sweetheart. No. Don't call me that. I'm not your sweetheart. I'm your idiot son who spent 17 years raising a kid that wasn't his, while you smiled and nodded behind my back, acting like you didn't know. Her lips trembled. I didn't know at first. But you knew later, I said coldly. When she told you I was dying, that I had only a few months left? And you believed her? Without even asking me. She sat down slowly, like her legs couldn't carry the weight of what was coming. She said you didn't want to talk about it, that you were in denial, that Tyler needed stability and she needed someone strong. I leaned across the table. So your plan was what? Help her transition to her new man while I fade into the background and die quietly? She looked away. I never meant to hurt you. I laughed. That's the thing about betrayal, Mom. It never comes from enemies. It comes from people who pat you on the back while pushing the knife deeper. She started crying. Good. You know what hurts the most? I said. That I spent years thinking you were the only one I could count on. That after everything, at least you'd be in my corner. I didn't know what to do, she whispered. You could have called me, I snapped. One call. Jake, are you really sick? That's all it would have taken. She shook her head. I thought she was telling the truth. She was crying. She said she didn't want to lose you, but she had to think of Tyler's future. I stood up. You thought she didn't want to lose me? She lost me the second she let another man treat our house like a damn motel. She sobbed into her hands. You're my son. I stared at her. Then act like it. She looked up, red-eyed. What are you going to do? I'm going to take everything they care about and set it on fire, I said. Not literally. I'm not that crazy. But financially? Socially? Emotionally? I'm just getting started. I left her there at the table, gasping between sobs. But as I reached the door, her voice followed me. She was pregnant when you married her. I froze. What? She didn't know who the father was, Mom whispered. She told me it was probably yours, but there was a chance it was someone else. Brandon, or another man. She said it didn't matter because you were safe. You'd love her. You'd raise the kid either way. I turned back slowly. She used me as a shield, I said, voice low. She made me the fallback. The fool who'd give her a perfect life while she kept chasing thrills behind my back. Mom nodded silently. And you let her, I said. You helped her lie to me. Because you thought that version of reality was easier to live with. She said nothing, but I saw it in her eyes. She regretted it. Only now, it was too late. I'll send you a copy of the court papers, I said. You're suing her? I'm suing all of them. Then I walked out and closed the door behind me. Not gently, not with forgiveness, but with the finality of a man who just buried the last piece of his past. The next part of my plan? I was going to crash Tyler's graduation party. And I wasn't coming empty-handed. I wasn't invited to Tyler's graduation party. Of course I wasn't. But I showed up anyway. Not because I wanted to celebrate him. Because I wanted the truth to explode in their perfect little faces, and I wanted every guest to watch the fireworks. It was hosted at Emily's sister's mansion. White tents. Fancy caterers. Stupid gold balloons spelling "Congrats, Tyler." Everyone was sipping wine and pretending their family wasn't a circus on fire. I parked 2 blocks down, walked in through the back fence, and strolled into the crowd like I belonged. I wore a sharp black suit, sunglasses, and a smile carved out of pure vengeance. The music was playing. People were laughing. Emily was clinking glasses, smiling like her world hadn't just collapsed a few days ago. Brandon wasn't there. He was still broke, unemployed, and probably crashing on a friend's couch. She must have told the guests he couldn't make it. Coward. But Tyler was there, the golden boy, posing for pictures with people who didn't even know the truth. I waited until the toast began. Emily took the mic, her voice sugar-sweet. Thank you all for coming to celebrate our amazing son. He's heading to UCLA this fall, and we're just so proud. I stepped forward. Except, he's not my son. Gasps. Heads turned. Emily froze, microphone still in hand. Go ahead, Emily, I said. Tell them. Or should I? Jake, what are you doing? She hissed through clenched teeth. Oh, just doing a little truth-telling, I said, raising my voice. Since this party is built on lies, I figured we could all use a little honesty. The crowd was dead silent. 17 years ago, I continued, this woman stood in front of God, my family, and the world, and married me. She said she loved me. Said she was carrying my child. Turns out, the baby wasn't mine. Never was. Emily stepped toward me, red-faced. You're ruining his day. No, I'm saving it, I snapped. I'm giving him the one thing you never did. The truth. I turned to Tyler, who was standing there, wide-eyed. You want to call Brandon your father? Go ahead. But know this, he was cheating on your mother the whole time. Knocked up a 22-year-old last year. That's why he disappeared. Tyler's jaw dropped. Emily lunged for the mic, but I pulled out my phone and held it up. Audio recordings. Text messages. DNA tests. I have it all. This isn't slander. It's evidence. A woman in the back whispered, "Is this real?" I looked at her. It's real. I was lied to for 17 years. I raised someone else's child, paid the bills, worked 2 jobs, while she was busy playing house with Brandon in my bed. Emily tried to speak, but I wasn't finished. And the best part? I said, my smile tightening. They told my own mother I was dying. So she'd accept the affair. So everyone would play along. So Emily could transition from wife to widow without getting her hands dirty. People were looking at Emily now. Not with sympathy. With disgust. She faked my terminal illness, I said. To make room for a guy who can't even keep a job. Tyler stormed off, pushing through the crowd. Emily's sister yelled, "Jake, get out." I turned toward her. Why? Because I ruined the illusion? Because I popped the dream bubble and now reality is leaking out. Security moved in. I raised my hands. I'm done, I said. But Tyler, if you ever want the full story, I'll send you the files. Just know. I loved you like a son. Even if your mother made sure you never loved me back. And with that, I walked out. No yelling. No fighting. Just the truth, dropped like a bomb in the middle of their celebration. And for once, it was quiet behind me. No applause. No music. Just silence. The kind of silence that lingers after a funeral. Because something had died that day. The lie they lived in. And I buried it myself. 3 days after the party, Tyler showed up at my door. He looked different. Hoodie over his head. Eyes hollow. Voice flat. You said you had the files, he muttered. I want to see them. I didn't say a word. I stepped aside, let him in. We sat in silence for a moment. The kind of silence that carries more weight than 100 arguments. Then I slid a USB drive across the table. It's all there, I said. Paternity test. Voice memos. Screenshots of Brandon cheating. Financial records. And the note your mother wrote to my mom, telling her I was terminal. He stared at the drive like it was radioactive. Then finally, he said, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I looked at him, this boy I'd raised, who carried my last name, who I taught how to ride a bike, who I stayed up with during fevers, who I cried for when he broke his leg in 7th grade. You weren't ready, I said. And I was too scared to lose you. He swallowed. Hard. So I'm not your son, he said. I sighed. No, but I was your father. Every day. Every year. Until you told me I wasn't. He looked down at the floor. His foot tapped nervously. I didn't know, he whispered. I mean, she always said you were distant. Cold. She said Brandon got her, that you didn't really care about us. I didn't care? I leaned forward, barely holding back the fire. Tyler, I worked 70-hour weeks to pay for your braces, your soccer trips, your goddamn prom tux. I gave your mother everything. Every part of me. And when I was too tired to talk, too stressed to laugh, that's when she painted me as the villain. His voice cracked. I didn't know who to believe. You believed the one who lied the best, I said. She's a world-class actress. You were just the audience. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry. Are you? I asked. Because when you stood in front of me and told me Brandon was more of a dad, you didn't hesitate. You didn't blink. I was angry, he said. I thought you were just walking out. Abandoning us. I laughed bitterly. No, kid. I was thrown out. Kicked to the curb. Branded a failure while your mother played house with another man under my roof. And you? You handed her the knife. He was crying now. Quietly. Not loud sobs. Just tears rolling down a face too young to carry this much betrayal. What now? He asked. I leaned back. That's up to you. You're almost 18. You can live with the truth. Or you can go back to pretending the lie still works. He looked at the USB again, then picked it up. I didn't ask to be in the middle of this, he said. Neither did I said. But here we are. He stood up, hesitated. Then he looked at me. Thank you, he said softly, for raising me, even if I didn't deserve it. I didn't answer. He left, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something strange. Not peace, but something close. Still, I wasn't done. There was one person left I hadn't touched. One person who enabled all this from the shadows. Emily's boss. The man who covered for her affairs. Helped her hide money. helped her fake documents. And I had a plan for him. One final strike. Because Emily thought she had backup. She thought her web was tight. But she forgot. I built my life in silence, studied weakness in people. And I just found his. His name was Howard Keene. Senior VP at Wilcox Financial. Big talker. Custom suits. A Rolex on each wrist, metaphorically speaking. And the bastard who helped Emily move our money into offshore accounts before the divorce even started. I knew his type. Men who played golf with CEOs and drank whiskey that cost more than rent in a decent neighborhood. Men who thought integrity was just a branding strategy. And, most importantly, men who had secrets. It took 2 weeks, one hacker, and a discreet ex-employee to get into Howard's private files. What I found? Gold. Turns out Mr. Perfect had a not-so-little side hustle, funneling client money through shell companies tied to Emily's real estate investments. Some legal, some shady, most designed to launder and protect assets in case of lawsuits. He didn't do it for free. Emily paid him in silence and other currencies I won't spell out. But what really made me grin? There was a recording. Not of them together. Worse. Howard telling a colleague to bury any documentation that shows Emily lied on her tax disclosures. She's clean on paper. She'll never get touched. You want to bet, Howard? I package everything into a digital folder. Every offshore transfer, every forged signature, every illegal asset shield, and sent it to 3 people. An investigative journalist I knew from college. An IRS fraud division contact I met through a client. Howard's wife. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to post online. I was going to let his own world chew him up from the inside. 2 days later, the news broke. Senior VP under investigation for fraud, money laundering. Howard tried to play it off. Said it was politically motivated, jealous rivals, whatever. Then the emails leaked. Then the screenshots. Then the audio. And Emily? Her name was in half the files. Her accounts frozen. Her assets seized. Her face, red and shaking, plastered across morning news as the mistress of finance fraud. I sat at home, sipping cheap bourbon and watching the chaos unfold. No more luxury yoga retreats. No more Botoxed brunches. No more playing the innocent mom who just needed love. She was now the centerpiece of a financial crime drama. And the best part? I didn't lay a single finger on her. Just gave the world what it needed to see. Truth. But that wasn't the end. Not for me. Because one thing still clawed at my chest like broken glass in my lungs. The fact that I had loved her. Once. Stupidly. Completely. And now that love was rotting inside me like a dead animal in the walls. I needed to finish this. Not for revenge, but for freedom. So I drafted the final letter. To Emily. I didn't curse her. I didn't threaten her. I wrote exactly 13 words. You destroyed everything I was. So I became everything you're afraid of. I mailed it. No return address. And then I did what I should have done years ago. I changed my number. Deleted every photo. Tossed my wedding ring into the river. And bought a one-way ticket out of the city. Because this wasn't my home anymore. Not the streets. Not the buildings. Not the memories soaked in gasoline and fire. I needed distance. But before I left, I had one last thing to do. Something quiet. Something personal. Something for me. And it involved a visit to the cemetery. To a grave with no name. Yet. But when I was finally ready to bury something inside. It was a gray morning. The kind where the air smells like wet pavement and regret. I stood alone in the cemetery at a spot where no headstone stood. Just a patch of grass next to an old oak tree. This wasn't a grave in the official sense. No name. No date. Just mine. In my hand was a small wooden box. Inside, the only physical remains of my old life. Emily's love letters. Tyler's handmade Father's Day cards. A photo of our fake little family at Disneyland. The ring I wore for 17 years, now rusted and scratched like the truth. I kneeled, dug the hole myself with a spade, no shovels, no gloves. Just me. In the dirt. When it was deep enough, I placed the box inside. For a moment, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the lid. Part of me wanted to keep one thing. One scrap of what we had. But then I remembered her smile, the one she wore while lying. While cheating. While making me raise another man's child. So I closed the box. Covered it with earth. Pressed it down with my palms. And whispered, "You don't get to live in my head anymore." That was the moment I felt it. Not peace, not joy, but space. An open field in my chest where rage used to live. I stood, wiped the dirt off my hands, and looked up at the sky. Clouds still hung heavy, but they were moving. And so was I. Later that day, I stopped by one last place before disappearing. A small mechanic shop on the edge of town. The owner owed me a favor. Years ago, I helped his brother beat a DUI charge. Now, he handed me the keys to a rebuilt '72 Chevy Impala. No paperwork, he said. No questions. Perfect. I drove west. Through towns I didn't know, faces I didn't recognize, roads that had no names. And as the miles passed, so did the wait. Not all of it, but enough to breathe. I stayed in cheap motels. Changed names. Got a new phone. Deleted every trace of who I used to be. Jake, the husband. Jake, the father. Jake, the fool. Gone. Now I was just a man with open scars and a rebuilt soul. But if you're listening, if you're a man like me, here's what I want you to know. She doesn't win. Not in the long run. Not when the lies collapse. Not when the mask falls off and the world sees what you always suspected. She might take your money. She might poison your name. She might even make your own blood turn against you. But you still have something she'll never understand. Honor. See, Emily thought I was weak because I didn't scream when she cheated. Because I didn't punch walls or burn her clothes. But strength isn't noise. Strength is walking away with your dignity. Strength is turning pain into precision. Strength is letting go, not because you forgive, but because you refuse to carry the filth she gave you. So to the men out there. If she betrayed you, don't just survive. Rebuild. Start over. Become unrecognizable to the person who tried to break you. Because the greatest revenge is living a life where she no longer matters. And I promise you, that day will come. It did for me. I'm not healed. I'm not whole. But I'm free. And sometimes, that's enough.